Thank you very much, George, for that kind introduction. And thank you so much for inviting me here to say a few words in conversation with the Lord Mayor today. So in response to your question about the considerations, it'll come as no surprise to you that I'm going to emphasize the importance of a green recovery, ensuring that the stimulus measures that are currently being designed are also being designed to accelerate the transition to a resilient, low carbon real economy with an opportunity to create jobs, level up and increase prosperity. I've said it before, but I'll say it again, that there are no pathways, no logical, coherent, high carbon pathways to growth. There weren't before the COVID pandemic, and there certainly aren't anymore. So the pathways to prosperity are exactly those pathways that we need to go down in order to get to a net zero economy. And I would, before passing on to the Lord Mayor, who I know will have many comments to make on this point too, I just wanted to point to a report that came out a couple of months ago by Green New Deal UK, a non-profit group, that they proposed a stimulus programme focused on green and digital infrastructure, research and development, energy and care work. And their research suggested that more than 1.2 million jobs could be created within the next 2 years, and more than 2.7 million jobs during the next decade. And so those would those permanent job losses that we've seen due to COVID, which are, expected to hit a couple of million over the next decade, could all be offset by such a strategy and the right amount of government investment and be replaced during these vital upcoming recovery years through green and social jobs. And the proposals that were put forward in this report were costed at about 68 billion, which is about a third of the government's total COVID response spend of 190 billion to date. So an encouraging report that I think is very much food for thought. But Lord Mayor, something you and I've spoken about before and very much interested in your views.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think here in the city, we're adjusting to the new norms. We want people to come back safely, but how many times have we heard build back better? I'll say it again, and it's out there, and everyone is looking at what we can do. We want to encourage, the innovation within the city, and as you know, the city has a great role to play with the greening finance, financing green, and I'm very excited about this. And COVID-19 has just highlighted that this is the next big issue, and we've got to do something about it. And I'm absolutely convinced that the city will address it, and we're doing it ourselves, as you know, with our own climate action plan, where we'll be net zero by 2040 within the square mile. But I can't stress enough how important it is. And look, we had some very big news just in the last 24 hours over some of the voting at some of the oil companies, which is going to make a big difference as well.
So pleased that you mentioned the city's great ambitions to green the square mile by 2040. As you know, that whole place-based investment and the focus on cities, local authorities, and actually channeling global capital towards local solutions is very much at the heart of our work at the Green Finance Institute, which is going to be even more important as we look to stimulate the recovery nationwide. So this is, the solutions that we need to look for when it's, creating jobs, decarbonising the real economy. These are highly granular, sector by sector solutions where we need to look at how we unblock the barriers to investment. And we do that by bringing stakeholders together to co-create those innovations and the interventions. So not only central government, and not only the finance sector, but also local government and academics and the NGOs and everyone in between that are needed in order for us to really efficiently use public balance sheet to provide those catalytic mechanisms that then support the developments of green technology and the rollout of green solutions. So now is a really exciting time with the launch of the UK Investment Bank to support both regional and local economic growth. And there are such parallels there, obviously, with the Scottish National Investment Bank. So this is a really exciting time to look at how do we channel more mainstream capital towards these local solutions and use these new public institutions to do that as efficiently as possible. And I think we've got an opportunity to provide a real blueprint here about how, green print maybe I should say, about how we best do this. And that's an opportunity for us in this really important COP year to showcase what a world-class business ecosystem looks like, with the eyes of the world on us.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Rhian-Mari, you and I agree on most things when it comes to the green agenda, but we do have this ecosystem in the city. And, the number of questions I've been asked about Brexit and what's going to happen. And I just point out there is a unique ecosystem here in the Square Mile, whether it's insurance, whether it's fintech, and now, as you say, green tech, and the whole financing agenda. But also the other thing which I've been saying to people, and I know you agree with me, is the green finance and the biodiversity go hand in hand. We're working on this across the board, and that, whether it's getting involved in the agricultural side, making that better, what we're doing in various ways in backing businesses to help them become more green. I mean, I say, look, I mean, I'm probably the first Lord Mayor that drinks oat milk, but you see the point I'm making, and that is something which is really important. And the ecosystem here in the city is going to help us get there, and whether it's funding the renewables or whatever it is. But also the other point I'll make is that this is critical, coming back to your point about the amounts of money the government's been spending. This is private and public together, and we can't do it on our own, and the government can't do it on their own. And I think that collaborative nature, and what we've already heard from Rishi when we had that Green Horizon Summit, and he talked about the green bond, which is going to happen before COP26, and we talked about mandatory TCFD. These are all great things, and everyone's focused on it. As you have said, this is the zero emissions COP, and it's a great moment for not only the City of London but for the whole of the UK.
I'm quite partial to oat milk as well, so that's another thing we have in common. We're going to have some things to disagree on soon, Lord Mayor. Look, London has such a fantastic track record of innovation in green finance and institutional innovation, which I think is really important. So, the UK were the first to come out with the carbon budgets, and the Climate Change Committee is the audit group to oversee that and all the fantastic work they do. And then there was obviously the Green Finance Task Force, the Green Finance Initiative, and now the Green Finance Institute, all of which the City of London Corporation have been closely involved in. And so, as we're now looking forward, again, I think there's an opportunity for some real leadership around, a race to the top on a taxonomy. So obviously we're at the Institute, we're working closely with the Treasury Department at the moment on how we onshore aspects of the EU taxonomy, tailor it to the needs of the UK, and actually address some of the challenges that have been raised since the work that has started in the EU around transition finance, etc. So I think we've got a real opportunity again to showcase how this could be a real enabling tool for financial services, for industry. And then there are also, really pressing challenges that we're pushing ahead with the education charter around green finance skills. So we've got, I think, 11 or 12 of the main chartered bodies are signed up to ensure that professionals who are working in the financial sector undertake green training green finance training as part of their professional qualification. So again, we're sort of leading the way on that and making sure that that's something that we export and share with partners overseas. And all of this absolutely critical in this COP year, when it's really bringing together the ambitions, as you say, across public and private sector. The Glasgow Financial Alliance on net zero is obviously something that we are hugely supportive, and the numbers signing up to that from across the financial services obviously increase day by day. So hopefully by the time we get to COP, that is going to be, and the momentum behind that is going to be genuinely tremendous. And then looking ahead post COP, where we're going to turn so many of these commitments into, mobilizing capital, actually coming up with the right financial mechanisms, the public-private partnerships, and the interesting and creative opportunities that there are for financial services to really build on this work and channel money to where we need it in the real economy. So anyway, back to you. I know you have real vision and ambition.
No, I mean, I think, look, what you've said is exactly what we're all trying to do. And it's wonderful that you at the Green Finance Institute work so closely with the corporation. And we've come out with reports on London Recharged, the Recovery Task Force, Square Mile, Future City. And as you say, we have history here. I mean, back in 1956, in the Clean Air Act, we were the first city to abolish coal fires. And you can see all the momentum and the news flow that is coming about around, with the G7 on banning financing coal-fired power stations. And then, whether it's also the different sectors. So one of the sectors that I focus on is asset management, and asset management is very much the conduit, dealing with the shareholders and dealing with the corporates. And the message is getting out there. As I said earlier, we've had some of these, votes that have taken place from big fossil fuel companies where you've got to change, and they are starting to change. And that comes back to the point about transition. And it's very important that we support that transition, which we are doing. And then you've got the other sectors. We mentioned insurance already, and then private equity. So I've held meetings with the private equity sector to work out what they're doing. And we need to make sure that there is not funding for some of these coal mines or going forward coming from some of the private equity. Now, the really large private equity companies won't be doing that, but some of the smaller ones might, and we need to encourage that. And we need to do a lot around what are the rules for private companies, because we all know what the corporates, because public shareholders can now give them a hard time, but the private companies, how do we help them as well? So, there is a lot to do. And as you quite rightly point out, this COP26 is just the start of our year presidency, and there's a great amount to do after that. But I think, what we're trying to do on the finance side is we've got a whole, the finance strategy, and Mark Carney's been instrumental in helping us with that. And as you know, with yourselves, the City of London Corporation and the Green Finance Institute, we have found a site in Glasgow. It's going to be very exciting. And after Alok Sharma's recent speech, we're intending to be there in person and to try and make a huge difference to get us where we need to be.
I'm really excited to go anywhere other than North London right now. So very much looking forward to going to COP. There was a point you made earlier that I failed to pick up on, which I think is really worth elaborating on, and that is the importance of biodiversity and nature loss. And this really is the sort of the frontier, if you like, in green finance and how we're thinking about the real challenges we have. I mean, in ESG to date, the E has very much been a sort of C for carbon and climate. And we do need to build on the great work that's already been done by so many in addressing climate change and recognizing that climate risk is financial risk, and expanding that to other aspects of environment and nature. So looking at water and soil degradation, biodiversity loss, air quality, and looking at how does that also translate into financial risk and the potential of stranded assets. And importantly, again, and I always like to emphasize the positive and the opportunity here, is what business and finance opportunities does a transition to a more nature positive economy actually translate into, and how do we go after them? And I just think that is another of the pillars in the COP dialogue. And again, I think a real opportunity for creative thinking and solutions from the financial community. So, exciting times for us to really, really lean into that whole agenda. I'm very proud to say at the Green Finance Institute that we have been co-chairing the informal working group for the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosure. So picking up very much on the work of the TCFD and the sort of 4 pillars of disclosure. And that's going to be a big focus going forward as the task force is now launched in earnest.
So I met someone the other day who was telling me on that point that you've just brought up, is that we need to sort of go to look at the supply chains. And I'm interested to hear what, and I mean, look, I've learned a lot about avocados and almond milk, which I didn't know until, a few weeks ago, that actually you think they're good, but if you look at the where they come from, the water that's used, etc., coming back to your point, and we should be looking, instead of the top down, looking at the bottom. Where does it start, and where's the end game? Is that something that you've been focusing on when it comes to the biodiversity and what food? And obviously, there's lots of comments about we should eat less beef and methane and what's going on there. And now you'll be pleased to know that if I do eat beef, I haven't quite got to the vegan yet, despite my daughter's protestations. It's grass-fed beef. I mean, things like that. I mean, I'm really interested to learn more about that, because they do go hand in hand with finance, because finance is looking to finance those sort of things that are getting us to that greener environment.
So we have found somewhere that we don't agree, Lord Mayor, as well as the rugby, to be fair. I haven't eaten beef for 25 years.
Yeah, well, that's very good. That's very good. I'm getting there. Eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can't quite get there yet on the veganism, but I have been a vegetarian for a long time and thriving on it. But yes, on the supply chains point, you make a really good point. And that's one that is a big focus for financial services in particular, looking at the provenance of commodities that are coming through supply chains and ensuring that there is enough transparency, especially when it comes to points such as deforestation. And the amount of deforestation that is being imported through supply chains, and deforestation clearly a huge cause of biodiversity loss, but also of climate change and global warming. So that sort of nature climate nexus is really an area for focus. We've been working for a while with various banks and government departments on looking at a potential financial mechanism that would provide a sustainable import guarantee. So providing actual pricing incentive for banks in their trade finance and supply chain finance products, so that they ask their clients and multinational organizations to provide diligence and transparency around the provenance of commodities in their supply chain, and in return give them a beneficial pricing in their supply chain and trade finance products. So that's an exciting area and quite a promising area that we're discussing with a number of major multinational banks. So yes, I think that's going to be an area of increased focus. That's one of the things COVID, the tragedy of COVID has made us very focused on the resilience of supply chains, and obviously taking those lessons forward as to how it applies to climate.
And the other thing, of course, is we have somewhere between 26 to 30 million homes that need to be retrofitted by 2050, and that is something I know you have done work on. And I was on a call the other day with the chairman of Barratt Homes, John Allen, and how they're looking at this whole sector. But there's huge amounts of money to be spent doing that. But coming back to your original point when we started this chat, is there are a huge number of jobs to be created, taking us forward on the Build Back Better strategy. And I think that's also exciting. It's not as if things are going to, and we're already hearing with coming out of lockdown, the number of jobs available and not enough people to go for them. So that may be an issue for us. But I'm always interested to hear more about that. And then the other point where we both think that the voluntary carbon markets, and this is a great opportunity for London to be the centre for carbon markets as well. But those 2 points, you're the expert more than me here. Here am I asking you the questions, not to say you're asking me, but it's a chat. It's not a Q&A, so to speak. But I'm going to pass those two over to you to hear your thoughts.
Well, I absolutely welcome those questions, especially on the retrofitting of buildings. That's been a big flagship project of ours, as you mentioned, since we established the Institute a couple of years ago now. And look, we know that £65 billion is needed to be invested in the sort of 29 million homes that need to be retrofitted, even to get them to the tighter minimum energy standards that the government have put in place for 2035. But there's research behind that, to your point, that suggests that just trying to achieve those interim targets could create 150,000 jobs. And we know that there are real blockers in the supply chain of skilled labour and in the construction industry and in the retrofitting industry of people that are skilled in the new retrofitting techniques. And so one of the things we always say at the Institute is we can't solve for all the issues that are necessary across the whole value chain, but we don't want finance to be the blocker. So, that's why we're currently, I think our coalition on energy efficiency of buildings now has over 320 members. I think something like 70% of the UK mortgage market is now covered in that particular coalition, which is coming up with some really valuable and innovative solutions to how we get over some of the barriers to channel capital towards retrofitting homes. So that's an ongoing piece of work that we are delighted to be working on, and actually have started expanding into Europe as well, exporting that work and working with partners more broadly. So I won't bore everybody with some of the solutions. They're all available on our website, and they range from everything from green rental agreements to green ISAs to importing the US's property assessed clean energy program, which I think has now successfully channeled over $9 billion of institutional capital into retrofitting both domestic and commercial properties. So no mean feat trying to import that sort of program into the UK, given some of the regulatory barriers. But none of this is easy, and that's why it requires all this sort of broad-based collaboration in order to tackle it. And
which we're seeing. I mean, just on that point, collaboration, which we're seeing. And I just the other day did a virtual trip to New Zealand, and they've created a sustainable finance forum, which is launching very soon. And look, New Zealand isn't quite where we are, awareness, etc. But this is where, in my role as ambassador for financial and professional services for the whole of the UK, and normally, as you know, I'd be 100 days of the year travelling, but I can assure you, as Lord Mayor, I think I've reached more people than any other Lord Mayor in the history because of the virtual world we're in. But that's a positive as far as talking about the collaborative nature and influencing countries around the world, which I know you have done as well, as the CEO of the Green Finance Institute. So now, sorry, back to carbon markets.
Back to carbon markets, but the point you make about making sure that the message about green finance and the imperative of greening finance and financing green sort of escapes the echo chamber and becomes a mainstream topic. That's something that's just really changed over the last couple of years. And well, thank you to all the work that you've been doing in your position of Lord Mayor and using that platform. And actually, one of the positives from this horrible pandemic has been the ability to, speak to a far broader audience. Remember our Green Horizons Summit, I can't remember exactly, 300,000 viewers and 9-point-something million Twitter impressions. So
I mean, that's right. And and I know I speak for you as well, but the one person I'd love to praise is Sir Roger Gifford, who has sadly passed away, because not only was he a mentor to both of us, but he was an inspiration in the way he led the Green Finance Institute as chairman and what he did as a previous Lord Mayor. So, look, I think this is a good moment to praise Sir Roger as well, Rhian-Mari.
I agree. He leaves an absolute indelible mark on all the work that we're doing on green finance, and his legacy will live on. And we were both very fortunate to be able to work as closely as we were able to with him. And I know he's been a supporter of this conference in previous years as well. So, yes, thank you. I think it's an opportune moment for us to mention his work too. maybe with that we can. Oh, we haven't mentioned carbon markets, and I think
let's finish on carbon markets. A big positive on carbon markets
before we close. In that, obviously, there is some fantastic work that's happening under the leadership of Dame Clara First, very much building on the work that Bill Winters at Standard Chartered and Mark Carney has been doing at looking how we scale the voluntary carbon markets and ensure that London and the UK in particular is the forefront of what is going to genuinely be the most impactful way of channeling capital towards nature and nature-based solutions over the coming decade, and doing so in a collaborative way with other financial centres around the world, which is again going back to the point that I think is at the heart of what we both do at City of London Corporation and Green Finance Institute, which is collaborate and bring people together. So exciting times on so many of these topics. And as we look to COP and beyond, a real opportunity for so many people to get involved. So it falls to me to bring the conversation to a close. Thank you very much, as always, Lord Mayor, for a very interesting conversation. I look forward to continuing it with you. And also, I'm sure on behalf of the two of us, we'd like to thank Jeffy today for hosting us and for enabling us to be part of this conference.
Thank you, Rhian-Mari. It's been great fun.